What's going on, guys? Zuko back with another Dragonflight video. I'm finally going to do an updated Ele Shaman video for you guys since the buff. If you haven't seen, we got a 50% buff to earthquake damage over this last week, basically, since the last reset. So almost a week ago now, today. And I wanted to see kind of how it felt and give you guys an updated video on it. And I'm going to show you the video, the dungeon that I ran. I did a Waycrest Manor plus 20. Which is I think a decent enough level to sort of test these things. Now, it was on Tyrannical Week. It was sort of last week now. We're into another Fortified Week now. But, so, I think realistically it's going to do better on a Fortified Week because, you know, the mobs last longer. And I would always say that fundamentally a huge problem with Earthquake is always going to be that it takes 7 seconds to do its damage. I've said this on my stream so many times now, but most dots that you put on enemies... For example, Flame Shock lasts 18 seconds, which is a long amount of time. But the enemy can move, and the dot goes with them, right? Like all the other dots in the game, basically. Aflock, Shadow Priest, like there's so many classes that have dots. Earthquake, unfortunately, it's a 7-second dot, but it doesn't go with the enemy, right? It stays wherever you put it. And if the mobs move, then you lose damage right away. So, yes, it's been buffed by 50%, which is really, really good. But the reality is we have the same fundamental problems. If the enemies move, then we're gonna lose damage. So in my opinion, I think Blizzard needs to take a new stab at Earthquake and really change the way that it functions. I think that the Echoes of the Great Sundering talent needs to be fundamentally reworked to buff Earthquake in a way that reduces the amount of time that it's on the ground and increases the damage, and maybe you sacrifice the knockdown effect or something. I don't know, but there needs to be a better payoff for the way Earthquake works. The original Earthquake either needs to have a massively higher knockdown chance, and therefore it's being used as like, yes, it's an AoE ability, but it's more like extra utility because you're getting a lot of knockdowns. And then maybe you could have a talent down here at the bottom that removes the knockdown altogether, but makes all the damage happen in 1 second instead of 7. Like, I think that would be a good change because, yes, the 50% buff has come in and it feels good, but Earthquake still has fundamental problems. You know, enemies are going to move out of it. It doesn't do that much damage anyway. Like, the actual damage that it ends up doing is not that much in the context of everything. Now, it almost did 13% of my overall damage, so that is an upgrade from where it was a week ago. But 50% of a small number is still not a very big number, right? This is a huge problem. The skill needed a 50% damage buff, and it's still not that great. So let's get into the dungeon. I will show you, though, overall, I don't think that Ellie's in a bad place. And I always want to make sure that we highlight how good Ele Shaman can actually be just in general. Most of the other dungeons I've done show testing on have been like Everbloom, so I wanted to make sure I got a video footage of a different dungeon. But here's a fundamental. This is exactly what I'm talking about right here. Earthquake goes down, 2 earthquakes went down, and the tank moves because we're doing so much damage. He should move. Another earthquake went down right here. The tank moves again. Like, it's not even worth casting it. I just spent 100 Maelstrom almost for nothing. Now, this is a good little moment here. Earthquakes are on the ground. I'm doing big lava beams. We're doing good damage. The damage is fine overall, but just this whole idea of, like, buffing Earthquake by 50% just to have the exact same fundamental problems that we've already had with the ability, it's a little silly, right? It seems a little bit silly. I feel like this is obviously just a huge Band-Aid for the way that the skill functions right now, because it's not doing us that much. Now, on Fortified Weeks like we have right now, when you're watching this video, it's probably a Fortified Week, if you're watching it in the week that it came out, you're going to get more value because the mobs are going to last longer, for sure, which is really, really good. But again, it's still a ground effect. It's still a ground effect, and it's a ground effect that takes 7 seconds to do its damage. So, yeah, I just think that it would be nice if that wasn't the case. Of course, you also don't get any benefit out of your mastery. If we, like, jumped into the talents and actually took talents that buff the mastery and make it so that Earthquake, like Mountains Will Fall, will make it so that Earthquake can, in fact, overload, then sure, that would be great. But again, you're buffing a spell that just doesn't do that much damage. We accidentally pulled the boss here. No big deal. We reset. We pulled the boss. Now, besides the fact that this whole Earthquake thing is a little bit disappointing just right out of the gates, our damage is still really good. And you're going to see over the course of every single fight that we do, Ele Shaman will ramp up over time. You're going to be doing a very similar amount of damage no matter when we look at the pull, right? I'm doing 155k DPS. You can see the Feral Druid is doing way more damage than me, but you can see his damage is plummeting right now because he had a massive cooldown that he procced, and we don't really have a cooldown on Ele Shaman. Our Fire Elemental, sure, it's a cooldown, but it's not really a cooldown. It's not nowhere near as good as Berserk or Incarn for a Feral Druid. It's not the same thing, right? When the Demo Lock pops his Tyran, his big commander, he does crazy amounts of damage, right? We don't have anything like that on Ele Shaman. So we have that consistent damage that spikes up a little bit if we get some good Primordial Wave procs. If we get some Ascendance procs going, then our damage certainly will spike. But generally speaking, over the course of a fight, everybody else is going to go ding, and then they're going to slowly come down, and we're just going to start out at this steady pace and just stay on the plateau, which is pretty cool. I actually don't mind playing a spec like that. It just takes a little bit of time for the fight to go on, and you can see over the course of this fight, by the very end, we're climbing, the Feral Druid's dropping, right on, and then finally we're in first place by the very end. So it's kind of cool to see that. I just want to encourage you guys, don't be discouraged by some of these fights and be like, oh my god, look at the damage at the beginning. It's like we're not doing any damage. It's like, yeah, by the end of the fight you will. So, yeah. One difference that I'm playing in this build is I am not playing Surge of Power. I am playing Aftershock. It is a change that I have always made. I understand there's an example of an Earthquake going down and the tank moving. It's just a fundamental problem, guys. Here's a good Earthquake, though. We're getting smooth, but it is moving again. I should have, I guess, pre-positioned my Earthquake a little bit better. That's on me. That's on me, pre-positioning Earthquakes so that anticipating where the tank's going to go. Very good. But I'm in a Pug. I have no idea what he's going to do. But I'm using Aftershock instead of Surge of Power. I really like Aftershock. It's better on LE Blast, of course, but you can just, like, chain Earthquake into Lava Burst into Earthquake into Lava Burst into Earthquake into Lava Burst because you get the Wind Speaker proc, and that's going to give you a free Lava Burst. And then if you get a proc on Aftershock, that's a free Earthquake. You're just bouncing from one free proc to another, which is a very cool feeling. I like it a lot, and it makes our damage consistent. It just keeps it going. There's moments where, like, you're going to run out of resources, but you don't run out of resources because you're getting that free proc on the because of the Aftershock. So I really kind of like that style. It's very cool. We got a boatload of Spitefuls here. We end up killing them all. And we have some unfortunate Afflicted. Incorp. I'm really starting to hate Incorp. It's so crazy the difference between a class that can deal with Incorp with an instant cast ability, like Paralyze, versus a class like Shaman that has to fully channel Hex into an Incorp. It feels so bad. I honestly, like, the weeks where we have Incorp, I just don't even want to play a spec unless it has an instant CC for the Incorps because it feels so bad to play. One of the benefits of Ele Shaman, I think, with this Earthshock build versus LE Blast is, of course, you get big flexibility in your movement. You can move while casting a lot. I get the instant Lava Burst into the instant Earth Shocks into the instant Lava Bursts. Like, you get this amazing little cadence where you can just run around and cast. You can avoid Spitefuls. You can avoid ground effects. I really love that about Ele Shaman. You can see the damage. We're a little bit below everybody else. That's true. We're going to be a little bit below on most of the polls, but we have consistent DPS, and we are doing... It's good. There's nothing wrong with this at all. This is not going to cause you to not time a dungeon. You can do this build. You can do this kind of DPS on a plus 23, plus 24, and you will time the key. It is not because you're not doing enough damage. I promise you. You will. The reason you're not going to time the key is because you're missing kicks. You're missing crowd control. Things like Infest going off on this mob here. Things, really important kicks that are going to go off. Look, I have Infest targeted right now. I can kick it right there, and boom. Like, that's the important stuff that's going to make it so you don't time a key. I'm telling you over and over and over again, your damage... This is more than enough damage to ensure that you time a key. It's always going to be about the other stuff. Using your Cap Totem, using your knockback from Thunderstorm, or your knock up, depending how you're spec'd. Making sure that you're getting all of those crowd controls when they need to be done. That is the fundamental problem with Mythic Plus. There's another Infest cast right there. You must get all that stuff, and the damage will be more than enough to carry you. But if you miss the crowd control, if you miss some of that important stuff, you're just going to get one shot by something, and it's going to cause a group wipe, and that'll be the end of the key. So it's always important to remember that stuff. You don't want to be confused about why you're not timing a key. Forgetting to, use Hex on an Incorp. The current week that we're going to be in right now is going to have Afflicted mobs. Forgetting to get those Afflicted mobs is going to wipe your key every single time. It's not going to be about the damage. It's always about the extra mechanics that you have to get right. If you get them wrong, then you're just gonna wipe the key. So we have one more servant here before this boss. We chose to do this because Lust wasn't up yet. So we're going to do this boss, and then we're going to get Lust up and do the other boss. Remember, it's Tyrannical week, so we start off pretty strong here. Lots of damage at the beginning. We always have a good opener because of Primordial Wave. And it's very, very strong. And you're going to see the Feral Druid and the Warlock are going to bounce way ahead of us here because they have big cooldowns that they've been saving, right? So they've got Demonic Tyrant. They've got Berserk or Incarn probably. We have to stop and Hex this thing. I'm telling you, having to Hex the Incorps this past week was like such a DPS loss. Because I'm in a pug. I don't know if they're going to get it for me. So having to stop and do that is such a massive DPS loss. It's really, really frustrating. But this fight's pretty cool. You're going to see these guys get a lot of extra AoE procs, so they're going to do lots of damage. But we do end up catching up a little bit in the end. I think we end up around 140k, 150k by the end, depending on kind of where we settle here. I'm going to get to the next boss. Almost at 140k at the end. So we almost caught up to the Warlock. You can see that's how this always works, right? You're always going to get this this sort of steady amount of damage. I get etched to death there. It's nothing I can really do with that. You get this steady amount of damage coming out, and you're going to catch up to those specs who kind of go bounce to the top. Here's the Goliath. We get a really, really good start here. Unfortunately, we end up dying because the tank mistimes when he wants to walk in the fire. So our opening damage is awesome. We end up blowing up this Thorns for the Feral Druid to get him out of it. I hex that guy over there. We get a huge opener here. I love this. This is how good this was. When you have Lust plus your Primordial Wave haste window, it feels so good. You end up blasting a crazy amount of damage. And, yeah, this fight ends up going really, really well for us. It would have went really well in the end if we didn't end up dying to what this really big mistake that this tank makes here. I'm going to show you in a second. So the tank starts getting hit pretty hard. He starts looking for a fire. He walks over to this fire here. But unfortunately, Thorns comes out at the same time. He mistimes this really, really poorly. You can't do this. Don't ever do this. You have to wait until Soul Thorns comes out, until we clear Soul Thorns, then you can walk into a fire. Because if somebody is stunned, they're taking fire damage, and they're stunned, and the little red dudes are going to spawn. They're punching us right now. I should have been running away here, but I was trying desperately to break out my friend, and I was healing the Feral Druid, and I just got punched to death. He gets punched to death. It's not a good look, right? You can't do it at that time. He ends up rezzing the Feral Druid, which I think is the correct play, because the Feral Druid is going to do more damage over time on this fight, but my damage goes right down into the crapper, because we end up not being... We don't have another res for me, so... but anyway, the tank mistimes it again. There's a Thorns that goes off right in the middle of the fire guys punching the Feral Druid again. He goes, bruh, I hate this boss. But really, this was on the tank. The tank has to time it better. This is all about the tank. The tank completely dictates how this fight's going to go. So I end up dying. I end up losing a crazy amount of damage on this boss fight. So my overall damage, I would have been above the Feral Druid on this one, but they don't have another res for me, so it's okay. It is what it is. Sometimes it's just the way it goes. Down to the basement. We get a proc here on Ascendance. After my Primordial Wave, watch my damage. Lava Burst, and then we get a proc, I think, right after this on this one. Boom. We're doing 300k. We get a Lava Burst. We get a Stormkeeper into a Lava Beam. If only these mobs were fortified, they would have lasted longer. We would have done so much more damage. But that, you can see when when we do get our Ascendance procs, the damage is really, really strong right out of the gates. And then the rest of the time, the damage is good. It's just a solid amount of damage that comes out. Again, that sort of strong plateau of damage that's always going to be there. Sometimes you get these really big highlights where you get an Ascendance proc, but generally speaking, your damage is pretty steady, and it's okay. That's a good thing to bring to a key. It's good to have that kind of damage profile, because the other guys, they're going to have big mountains and valleys because of their cooldowns, and we just don't have that problem. So anyway, we end up killing here. This is good. I want to get to the next boss. We run down. We pull half of this. We probably could have pulled all of it, but it's fine. We have good damage here. Again, almost 200k. I kick the guy after he does warding candles. This is a really important note for you guys. If you don't know, when warding candles goes down, the witch will put candles right underneath her feet. As soon as she's done casting warding candles, you need to kick the next cast. So this next cast, Soul Bolt, because she's not going to move. So you kick Soul Bolt, then she'll move off of the candles, and then you can kill her. Unfortunately, we move her onto another set of candles, I think. Maybe they're not working or something, but you can see our damage is solid here. We go to this next final pack before the boss. I want to get to this boss to really show you kind of the cool tech on this boss. On this boss, you can Flame Shock Lady Waycrest, and then you'll Primordial Wave the other guy when she pulls him. So Flame Shock over there, Primordial Wave here. You want to keep a Flame Shock on Lady Waycrest at all times. It's going to double the proc rate on your Lava Surge procs for Lava Burst. It's amazing for this fight. Really, really good little tech there. You want to make sure that you have a Flame Shock on Lady Waycrest at all times. Use Spirit Walker's Grace on this fight to maintain your damage. I got to refresh my Flame Shock over here. Keep refreshing your Flame Shock on Lady Waycrest. By the end of this fight, you will have top damage for sure because you're able to just get those extra procs. Having 2 Flame Shocks out is literally the entire difference between me being at the top of the meters on this fight and me not being at the top of the meters. It sounds insane that that's the truth, but it is. That is the truth. You just get so many more Lava Burst procs. It's crazy. I refresh over here. There we go. Click it on her. You have to kind of be standing at the front of the room. But once you get it, you can see our damage is really strong. And throughout the entire fight, our damage is very strong. We keep refreshing it. But finally, she joins the fight. We can put our flame totem, our fire, I can't even think of what it's called right now. I'm so sorry. Liquid Magma Totem. I was doing too many other totems. Liquid Magma Totem, we can throw that on the ground. That's going to do double damage to them. And then you can see we're at the top of this fight here, which is really good. 162k. It's very, very strong damage. But just that little tech for you at the beginning of the fight. Want to make sure that you Flame Shock Lady Waycrest. Here's a good one. Earthquake gets lots of value, I think, on this last pack if they don't move. As long as you can keep them in place. I end up doing a Cap Totem. So I stun them all right here, and that keeps them in place. And then I just go Earthquake, Lava Burst, Earthquake, Lava Burst, Earthquake, Lava Burst. And we end up doing a lot of damage here, which is awesome. You can see it starts to pile up. So this is where Earthquake is good. But again, there's very few situations where Earthquake actually gets real value. This is one of them. But in reality, it's just there's a fundamental problem with the way Earthquake works right now, man. They need to do a change in the talent tree to give you at least an option to change the way Earthquake functions so that Earthquake can get all of its damage out of the way and maybe have a very small chance to knock down or no chance to knock down. Like you sacrifice the knockdown to get all the damage up front right away. That would be really cool, I think, in my mind. There's probably some dungeons where having Earthquake do its damage over time is fine, you know, where you have a tank that's conscientious of your Earthquake, trying to make sure that they don't move too much, and the mobs themselves don't move too much. But the way that most of the dungeons work right now, the tank is just moving constantly, just moving, and making it so that your Earthquake doesn't get very much value. It's a very frustrating experience. But I want to show you that even though that's the case, even though we got a 50% buff on Earthquake, and it's not really that good of a buff, because of how fundamentally problematic Earthquake is, we can still do lots of damage as an Ele Shaman. Our damage is good. We're keeping up with the Warlock here. We're a little bit behind the Feral Druid, of course, but we're keeping up with the Demolock, which Demolock's in a really, really good place right now. If you don't know, Demolock is, like, fantastic. It's probably one of the top 4 DPS, I would say, in the game right now. Like, Fire Mage is really good. Demolock's really good. Obviously, Demon Hunter is still really good. BM Hunter was good for a while. Demolock would be like that 4th or 5th slot, and I think we're keeping up really well. Our damage went down a lot on that other boss fight. That's why our overall DPS is going to be a little bit lower. But this is what it looks like overall. Lava Burst doing 40% of our damage. Earthquake, it's a little bit better than it was before, but the reality is giving a 50% buff to an ability that doesn't do that much damage is not a very good thing to do. And again, there's a fundamental problem with the way that Earthquake functions. It just, doing damage over 7 seconds when you can move the mobs is just not a good idea. It's just not good. So if it did as much damage as like Liquid Magma Totem did, then that would be great. Because like Liquid Magma Totem is a dot over time, once again, but it has upfront damage that does a lot, and it adds Flame Shock, so it has other functionality. So if you don't get all of the ticking damage out of Liquid Magma Totem, that's okay. Earthquake does not have any functionality that way. It has nothing special that it does besides knock enemies down. So I really hope Blizzard takes another look at the way Earthquake works and gives us some options on the talent tree. Replace Echoes of the Great Sundering and give us some options. Give us like a 2 different options here. I would love a double node here. For instead of Echoes, give us 2 different options for the way that Earthquake functions. Let us modify this a bit and make it work really, really well. You know, give us a reason to take Mountains Will Fall, so that Earthquake triggering our Mastery Overload is actually worth it. You know, right now it's just not worth it. So I hope they kind of think about that in the future. Thank you guys so much again for watching. I love you all. Thank you so much again. Tell me what you think about the build down below. Remember, the main difference is I'm not taking Surge of Power. I'm taking Aftershock. That's my main difference in this entire build. That's all I've really changed. But let me know what you think in the comments down below. What do you think about the 50% buff to Earthquake? Does it matter? Has it changed anything? Please let me know in those comments down below. Thank you so much again for watching, guys. I love you all. I will see you in the next one.